Most of us can remember learning about the horrors that Adolf Hitler's regime perpetrated on the social and racial classes that were considered undesirable. These people were referred to as the Untermenschen, roughly translated as the subhuman. Among others, these groups included Eastern Europeans and, of course, the Jews. One way of eradicating the so-called Untermenschen was human sterilization or preventing these people from reproducing. But relatively few people know that a Princeton-educated American biologist developed the plan for human sterilization that was adopted by Hitler's Germany in the 1930s. Harry Laughlin was the de facto leader of the American eugenics movement in the 1920s and 30s. Eugenics was the belief that the human gene pool could be improved by only allowing supposedly pure people to have children. People that had undesirable traits were to be discouraged from having children, or in more extreme cases, prevented from reproducing by means of sterilization. It is notable that Leonard Darwin, son of Charles, supported Laughlin's work. Laughlin was one of the founders of the American Eugenics Society, or AES, in 1926. The AES coordinated efforts of smaller, local eugenics groups that had sprung up throughout the United States. By 1930, the American Eugenics Society had over 1,200 members, mostly prominent and/or wealthy citizens. The AES promoted racial improvement, eugenic health, and genetic education through lectures and exhibits that were held throughout the country. A popular promotion was the Fitter Family Contest, held at state fairs across the United States. These contests usually required that each family submit a eugenics history and undergo medical and intelligence testing to be designated as a fitter family. Along with co-founding the American Eugenics Society, Laughlin focused on two strategies to improve and maintain the American gene pool. These strategies were immigration restriction and mandatory sterilization of the unfit. In 1922, Laughlin wrote a book titled Eugenical Sterilization in the United States that included a model for eugenic sterilization law at both the state and federal level. Laughlin's model sterilization law included a list of 10 socially inadequate classes that are potentially subject to mandatory sterilization. Number 1, the feeble-minded, defined on a sliding scale based on IQ. Number 2, insane individuals. Number 3, habitual criminals. Number 4, epileptics. Number 5, alcoholics and drug addicts. Number 6, those with diseases such as tuberculosis, syphilis, and other chronic infectious conditions. Number 7, people that are blind or have seriously impaired vision. Number 8, people that are deaf or have seriously impaired hearing. Number 9, anyone with physical deformities. And number 10, people that are dependent on society for survival, such as orphans, the homeless, tramps, and so-called paupers. Along with defining people that should be sterilized, Laughlin's model law also recommended an officer in each state to administer the program. The duty of the state eugenicist, as defined in the model, are to determine who are the socially inadequate people in his state and to keep records of such persons. That includes the authority to question relatives and medical authorities and to issue arrest warrants if needed. The state eugenicist was the final authority to determine those people that required sterilization. The Virginia Sterilization Act of 1924 was the first state law that was passed based on Laughlin's model. But previously, in 1907, Indiana passed a law making it the first state to enact eugenic sterilization legislation. And in 1911, California and Washington passed their own laws. California targeted patients in state hospitals and institutions for the mentally retarded, as well as prison inmates, while Washington targeted habitual criminals and men convicted of rape. By 1930, 30 states had passed laws that mandated eugenic sterilization for various moral or criminal offenses. Almost all of the laws required mandatory sterilization for mentally defective people. 19 states required preemptive sterilization for parents of children who were likely to be born with health disorders. 6 states encouraged sterilization for individuals whose children might be, quote, socially inadequate. At the federal level, Laughlin's model eugenics law had 2 main ideas. First, Laughlin openly admitted that his standards of physical, mental, and moral qualities would be discriminatory. His document stated that at the federal level, the government should be willing to enforce laws which take on the appearance of racial discrimination. But according to Laughlin, these laws would not truly be focused on race. This is because he believed that in every race, quote, even the very lowest, there would be some individuals who would still qualify as pure. Second, Laughlin stated that the immigration policy of the United States should base the criteria for admission of immigrants primarily on, quote, the possession of sterling natural qualities. He further wrote that this would preserve, upbuild, and specialize better family stocks. Laughlin also insisted that this was regardless of race, language, or present social or economic condition. Harry Laughlin also sent a copy of his eugenic sterilization book to government officials in Germany. They liked his ideas so much that they structured their own eugenic sterilization laws after Laughlin's model law. In 1933, Germany passed the Law for the Prevention of Hereditarily Diseased Offspring. Under this law, the Nazis sterilized over 400,000 children and adults, mostly Jews and other people defined as undesirable or defective. Textbooks in schools were modified to praise the benefits of eugenics, including this page titled, Here You Contribute, which describes the underclasses as a hereditary anchor on society. In 1936, the Germans invited Laughlin to an award ceremony at Heidelberg University, where he was scheduled to receive an honorary doctorate for his work on the science of racial cleansing. As eugenics gained popularity in U.S. state legislatures, it also found its way into the academic community. By 1928, there were almost 400 courses on eugenics taught in some of the nation's leading universities. This idea that only the elite should prosper and reproduce was also supported by feminist organizations such as the National League of Women's Voters, the National Federation of Women's Clubs, and the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And of course, one of the most well-known feminists to jump on the bandwagon was Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger, who believed that the lower classes were unfit and feeble-minded. After World War II, when the full horrors of the Nazi regime were revealed, eugenics fell out of favor in the United States and around the world. By 1960, the American Eugenics Society membership had dropped to 400, and those members were mostly science or medical professionals. In 1972, the AES was renamed Society for the Study of Social Biology. So at least on the surface, eugenics mostly faded away in the United States. But the theory of eugenics, which is increasing desirable characteristics through human reproduction, is far from gone. It has a new name, genetic engineering. As medical technology advanced, we learned to change or eliminate genes, which in some cases prevented or cured disease. But how far should genetic engineering go? Who determines what human traits are undesirable? There are many ethical dilemmas surrounding genetic engineering, and we would be wise to heed the warnings from our not-so-distant eugenics history so as to not repeat the horrors of the past.